Most people believe success comes from working harder. The evidence seems obvious. Work more, earn more. But the real pattern looks strangely different. Some people work 80 hours every week. Others work half as much. Yet the second group often ends up wealthier. Why? The usual explanation points to talent, or luck, or timing. Those answers sound satisfying. They are also incomplete, because something much larger is happening beneath the surface. An invisible system quietly decides which effort is rewarded, and which effort disappears without notice. That system has existed for centuries, but today's economy has amplified it beyond recognition. Most people never notice it. They only experience its consequences. Imagine two workers producing the exact same amount of value. Both are intelligent. Both are disciplined. Both genuinely care about doing excellent work. At the end of the year, however, one receives a modest raise. The other becomes financially independent. What changed? Not the effort. Not the intelligence. Not even the quality. The difference lies somewhere else. It lies inside incentives. Incentives sound like an economic buzzword. In reality, they are much simpler. An incentive is whatever encourages a system to reward one behavior over another. Every modern institution runs on incentives. Companies, governments, markets, social media platforms, schools, even families. Each system quietly decides what deserves recognition. Then it encourages people to pursue exactly that. Most individuals believe they are making independent choices. Often they are simply responding to invisible incentives designed long before they arrived. This creates an uncomfortable question. What if hard work is only valuable when a system decides it is? That question feels unfair, because society teaches something different from childhood. Study hard, work hard, stay consistent. Eventually everything will work out. For generations, this advice largely reflected reality. Industrial economies rewarded repetition. Factories rewarded reliability. Offices rewarded attendance. Promotion usually followed experience. The system valued predictable effort. Then technology changed the game. Machines became faster. Software became cheaper. Information became almost free. Suddenly repetition lost much of its value. Automation absorbed routine work. Artificial intelligence accelerated knowledge work. Digital platforms connected billions of people instantly. The incentives shifted, but the cultural advice barely changed. People continued optimizing for yesterday's rules. Economist Thomas Sowell once argued that incentives matter more than intentions. That statement appears almost obvious. Yet it explains countless modern frustrations. A company may genuinely appreciate loyal employees. Its financial incentives may still reward cost reduction instead. A social platform may claim to value meaningful conversation. Its algorithms may receive stronger incentives to maximize engagement. Those incentives quietly reshape behavior. Not because anyone necessarily wants them to, because systems naturally optimize toward their rewards. This phenomenon appears repeatedly across history. When railroads were expanding across America, companies rewarded track length. Builders responded exactly as expected. They built longer tracks, sometimes unnecessarily winding ones. The incentive produced behavior that looked irrational from outside, but perfectly rational inside the system. Modern workplaces operate similarly. Employees optimize performance reviews. Managers optimize quarterly numbers. Executives optimize shareholder expectations. Investors optimize returns. Every participant behaves logically, yet the overall outcome often surprises everyone involved. This is known as emergent behavior. No single person designed the final result. The system created it. Political scientist Elinor Ostrom spent decades studying how systems influence cooperation. Her research repeatedly showed that outcomes depend less on individual morality than on the structure surrounding individuals. Change the rules. People change. Change the incentives. Entire societies change. That realization forces another uncomfortable question. If incentives shape behavior so powerfully, what incentives are shaping modern careers right now? The answer begins with a simple observation. Modern economies rarely reward effort alone. They reward leverage. Leverage means producing results that extend far beyond the hours invested. For centuries, physical leverage came from machines. Today, digital leverage comes from software, networks, media, and intellectual property. A single engineer can build an application used by millions. A single creator can publish one video viewed across every continent. A single investor can own assets generating income around the clock. The number of hours never changed. The scale of the outcome did. This shift explains why two equally hardworking people can experience completely different futures. One sells hours. The other builds systems. Hours eventually stop. Systems continue working. Research from Massachusetts Institute of Technology has repeatedly documented how digital technologies create winner-take-most markets, where small differences in reach produce enormous differences in rewards. That pattern appears across music, software, publishing, education, entertainment, even consulting. Digital distribution removes geographical limits. Once a product exists, copying it costs almost nothing. The incentive therefore favors creations that can spread endlessly rather than labor that must be repeated daily. Notice what this changes. The market begins rewarding scalability instead of effort. This feels deeply unfair, because effort remains visible. Scalability often remains invisible. A programmer may spend months writing software. After launch, millions benefit without additional labor. An author writes one book. Readers continue buying it years later. A designer creates one template. Thousands download it overnight. The effort happened once. The reward continues. Meanwhile, another person works 12 hours every day. Every dollar still requires another hour tomorrow. Both people worked hard. Only one aligned with the system's incentives. This distinction becomes even clearer through attention. Attention has quietly become one of the world's most valuable resources. Every notification competes for it. Every headline fights for it. Every platform measures it. Economist Herbert A. Simon predicted this decades before smartphones existed. He observed that an abundance of information creates a scarcity of attention. In other words, information becomes cheap. Attention becomes expensive. Modern businesses quickly understood this principle. If attention is scarce, capturing it becomes incredibly profitable. Advertising evolved accordingly. Algorithms evolved accordingly. Entire industries reorganized around this invisible resource. Suddenly, creating value was no longer enough. People first had to capture attention, then keep it, then convert it into trust. Only afterward could traditional hard work produce meaningful rewards. This explains why outstanding work sometimes remains unnoticed. Visibility became part of value. Not because quality disappeared, because quality without discovery creates no impact. Think about the countless researchers producing remarkable discoveries. Many remain unknown outside their fields. Now compare them with someone who communicates complex ideas clearly online. Both possess knowledge. One also possesses distribution. The system rewards both, but not equally. Distribution became leverage. Communication became leverage. Networks became leverage. These were once considered optional skills. Now they influence opportunity itself. Management professor Clayton Christensen explained that disruptive innovation rarely begins by outperforming existing systems. Instead, it changes the incentives. New technologies first appear weaker. Then they become more convenient. Then cheaper. Eventually, they redefine the market itself. The winners are not always those working hardest. They are often those adapting fastest to changing incentives. That idea challenges a deeply held belief. People often imagine careers as ladders. One step, then another, then another. Reality increasingly resembles a network. Opportunities connect unexpectedly. Relationships matter. Reputation compounds. Knowledge overlaps across industries. One introduction changes everything. One project creates 5 new ones. The system rewards connected value rather than isolated effort. This creates an important distinction. Working hard inside the wrong system often produces diminishing returns. Working inside the right system allows each effort to multiply the next. That multiplication looks like luck from the outside. From inside, it is usually incentives quietly doing their work. The hidden incentive system becomes even clearer when looking at how successful organizations make decisions. Most people imagine companies rewarding the best ideas. In reality, companies often reward ideas that fit their incentives. These are not always the same thing. Suppose an employee develops a brilliant solution. It saves time. It improves quality. Customers love it. Yet management rejects it. Why? Perhaps implementing the idea would reduce this quarter's profits. Perhaps it would threaten an existing department. Perhaps executives are rewarded for short-term financial performance rather than long-term innovation. From the employee's perspective, the decision appears irrational. From the system's perspective, it is perfectly logical. The incentives never changed. This is why intelligent people inside large institutions sometimes make decisions that seem obviously wrong. They are rarely responding only to facts. They are responding to incentives attached to those facts. Behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman demonstrated that human judgment is shaped by cognitive shortcuts and contextual pressures rather than pure rationality. When those psychological tendencies combine with institutional incentives, entire organizations begin repeating the same patterns. Not because individuals lack intelligence, because systems quietly direct attention toward certain outcomes and away from others. The same principle explains many modern careers. Imagine someone who spends years becoming exceptionally skilled. The expertise is genuine. The effort is extraordinary. Yet demand for that skill slowly disappears. Technology changes. Consumer behavior changes. Markets evolve. Nothing about the individual's work ethic declined. The environment simply stopped rewarding that particular value. Economists call this structural change. People experience it as confusion. This creates one of the greatest misconceptions about success. Many assume failure always reflects personal weakness. Sometimes it reflects environmental mismatch. A farmer cannot harvest wheat in the desert by working harder. The environment matters. The same is true for careers. Working harder inside a declining system rarely changes the outcome. Recognizing when incentives have shifted is often more valuable than increasing effort alone. This perspective also changes how opportunity is understood. Opportunity is not randomly distributed. It follows incentives. Capital flows where returns appear highest. Talent follows opportunity. Innovation follows investment. Media follows attention. Eventually, people begin following media. The cycle reinforces itself. Sociologist Robert K. Merton described a similar pattern through what became known as the Matthew effect. Small initial advantages often accumulate into enormous differences over time. Success attracts resources. Resources create additional success. Visibility creates more visibility. The rich get richer is not only about money. It also applies to knowledge, influence, trust, reputation, and networks. The invisible incentive system naturally compounds existing advantages. This can feel discouraging, but it also reveals something important. Compounding works in both directions. Tiny improvements repeated consistently inside the right environment eventually produce disproportionate outcomes. That is why one meaningful relationship may become dozens. One valuable project may generate years of opportunities. One useful idea may evolve into an entire business. The effort compounds because the system rewards replication. This is very different from repeating identical labor every day. One scales. The other resets every morning. The distinction is subtle, yet it changes everything. Notice how many of today's most valuable businesses own very few physical assets. Their greatest resources are software, data, networks, brand, community, intellectual property. These assets continue generating value while their owners sleep. That is not because they eliminated hard work. It is because they redirected hard work toward assets that continue producing value after the initial effort ends. The incentive system increasingly rewards ownership over activity, creation over repetition, leverage over hours. Those who understand this are not necessarily working less. Many work harder than ever. The difference is where their effort is invested. Instead of asking, "How can I work more?" they quietly begin asking a different question. What kind of work keeps working after I stop? That single question changes career decisions, investment decisions, learning decisions, even lifestyle decisions, because it aligns effort with the direction the system is already moving. Eventually, the hidden system leads to one final realization. Hard work was never the enemy. It was never obsolete. It was simply misunderstood. The real question was never whether effort matters. The real question was where that effort is being invested. Imagine rowing a boat with incredible strength. Every movement is powerful. Every stroke demands discipline. But the current is flowing in the opposite direction. Working harder only increases exhaustion. Now imagine turning the boat. The strength remains exactly the same. The effort remains exactly the same. Only the direction changes. Suddenly, the river begins doing part of the work. This is what incentives quietly accomplish. They create currents that either amplify effort or quietly erase it. Most people spend years trying to become more productive. Few spend enough time understanding the systems surrounding their productivity. That difference separates activity from progress. The most successful individuals are often remarkable observers. Before changing themselves, they study the environment. Before making larger sacrifices, they examine the incentives. Before committing years to a path, they ask a simple question. What does this system actually reward? The answer is often surprising. Many workplaces reward visibility as much as competence. Many industries reward adaptability more than experience. Many markets reward speed more than perfection. Many audiences reward clarity more than complexity. This does not mean quality has stopped mattering. Quality still matters deeply, but quality alone is rarely enough. It must intersect with incentives that allow it to be recognized, distributed, and rewarded. This explains why identical effort produces different outcomes in different places. A brilliant entrepreneur in the wrong market struggles. The same entrepreneur enters a growing industry. Everything changes. A talented teacher reaches 30 students inside one classroom. The same teacher creates educational content online. Millions begin learning from the exact same knowledge. The talent remained constant. The system changed. The incentive changed. The scale changed. This perspective also changes how failure should be interpreted. Failure is not always evidence that someone should quit. Sometimes it is evidence that the surrounding incentives deserve closer examination. History is filled with people who appeared unsuccessful until circumstances aligned with what they had already built. Ideas dismissed in one decade became industries in the next. Skills considered ordinary became extraordinary after technology evolved. Entire professions emerged because incentives shifted. The people did not suddenly become smarter overnight. The environment began rewarding what they already possessed. This is why adaptability has become one of the most valuable modern skills. Not because the world changes randomly, because incentive systems never stop evolving. Technology changes incentives. Regulation changes incentives. Culture changes incentives. Economics changes incentives. Every major transformation quietly rewrites the rules that determine what society values. Those who notice early often appear unusually fortunate. In reality, they recognize the current before everyone else. Perhaps the most important lesson is not about careers at all. It is about perspective. People naturally focus on visible effort because effort is easy to measure. Hours can be counted. Meetings can be scheduled. Tasks can be completed. Incentives are harder to see. They exist beneath the surface. They quietly influence millions of decisions without announcing themselves. Yet, invisible forces often create the most visible outcomes. The next time someone appears to achieve extraordinary success, the first question may not be, how hard did they work? A more revealing question might be, what system rewarded that work? The answer often explains far more than talent alone ever could. Because behind nearly every remarkable outcome stands an invisible structure directing attention, resources, opportunity, and reward. Most people spend their lives improving their effort. Far fewer spend time understanding the systems that determine where effort actually goes. And that may be the greatest hidden advantage of all. So perhaps success was never simply about working harder. Perhaps it has always been about recognizing the invisible incentive system that decides when hard work finally begins to matter.